Oh man, I'm so excited to show you guys my rhubarb pie recipe. So I just used frozen rhubarb, chop it up, 8 cups of frozen chopped rhubarb. It's been in my freezer because obviously it's seasonal. You're going to take 1.5 cups of sugar. You're going to add a cup of flour and then some cinnamon. And I just mix it up right inside of that freezer bag. So I'm going to let it kind of thaw out while I'm making my crust and my topper, my crumble on top. Just mix it inside of there and let it kind of thaw out a little bit as I'm preparing everything else. I just really, really love rhubarb pie. I don't know if you've tried it before, but it is disgusting when you eat it off the stalk. So it's like a vegetable, but it's got this really tangy flavor, kind of similar to apple pie, but not a gross apple flavor. So it's got the tang. It's awesome. So for crust, you're going to mix 3 cups of flour, and I just do it in my mixing machine, which I'm probably going to be judged by you amazing bakers out there. But I mix it on low and it does fine. I add a teaspoon of salt and 1.5 cups of shortening. And like I said, just make sure you're mixing it on low. If you mix it higher than that, it will not turn out as good. It won't be as crumbly of a crust. And so mix that on low until you get like pea-sized clumps. And just be patient with it. It really doesn't take very long in your hand mixer. Sorry, your KitchenAid or like your countertop mixer. Or you could use a hand mixer, I guess, if you mixed it on low that way too. I haven't tried it that way, but it would probably work. Anyway, so I mix that until I get pea-sized clumps, and then you'll want to add an egg to that. But yeah. So rhubarb pie is a special thing to me, just because it's so delicious. Don't ever add strawberries to your rhubarb pie. I don't know why people do that, but it takes away all of that rhubarb flavor. Mix in the egg just until it's combined. And I actually had to stop my machine and scrape my egg yolk off of my mixing attachment. Mix that in, and then you're going to start adding distilled white vinegar, 1 tablespoon of that. And that might seem like a strange ingredient, but actually makes whatever it does to the crust, it either makes it a little more crumbly and tender, and it adds that vinegar flavor. And then you're going to add 5 tablespoons of cold water. And I slowly add that, and then you'll notice that the dough will kind of just start sticking together, and you'll get that perfect consistency for rolling out your pie dough. So your crust. So you'll see it start coming together here, and I'll stop the machine and show you an example of what it's going to look like, how it's going to feel when it's ready to roll out to put into your pie pan. And you can even freeze it at that point. If you wanted to freeze your dough and use it later, you could. I keep going back to the rhubarb, shaking it around a little bit, making sure that flour and sugar gets dispersed in there. Now, parchment paper is my favorite. I didn't used to use it a lot early on in my baking and cooking, but it is phenomenal, especially for rolling out crust. So, of course, you can use it for baking cinnamon rolls and everything, but it's kind of that non-stick papery consistency. And so when you roll out your dough, always start from the middle. But once you roll out your dough, it's not going to stick to it, and you can kind of just put that dough right into the pie tin, which is amazing. And then, of course, pinch your edges to get that nice finished look. I'm not too picky about it. I'm kind of the home cook, so it's fine if it looks a little crappy. It doesn't matter. Roll out your other half of the rest of the dough, because this recipe, obviously, you're making 2 rhubarb pies. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. You're probably like, what's happening? Why are there 2 pies? Yep, so this recipe makes 2 rhubarb pies. So you're going to go ahead and pinch the edges of that. Set your oven to 375 degrees. Don't judge my dirty oven. I had a busy day today and wasn't able to clean it. This is now the crumble recipe. So for the crumble topping, you are going to put in 1 cup of flour and 1 cup of packed brown sugar. And this is actually a pastry blender, and you could use this to make the pie crust. But I'm actually going to use this for the crumble because when I cut in the butter into the crumble, I want it to really have that perfect consistency. I've tried to make a crumble with my KitchenAid before, and it just turns into like a blobbity blob. And you don't want that. You want to cut it in so you've got those nice pea-sized crumbles. So some softened butter. You're going to cut that in, or room temperature butter. Cut that in until you get the pea-sized balls again. And I had to turn off my camera on this because I could not do that one-handed. I needed to be able to hold my bowl to really push down and get that cut in there. You can kind of see the consistency that you're going for. And once you've got that crumble top and your oven's preheated, then you can start assembling your pies. So you're going to take that frozen rhubarb that now should be thawing a little bit. It should feel a little bit less frozen, maybe a little softer. And you're going to dump half of each of those, a half of a bag into each of those pie crusts. So it's about 4 cups per pie crust. And once you get all of that in there, then you'll put the crumble on top. But yeah, in the comments, let me know if you guys have ever had rhubarb pie before, because it is so delicious. And it's frustrating because rhubarb is only available at certain times of the year. And so freezing it is really the only way to go if you want to have rhubarb desserts throughout the whole year. And I'm partial to having them at Thanksgiving as well. Then you're going to go ahead and put that crumble mixture on top. I'm pretty generous with it. With this recipe, I usually have a little bit left over just because I don't want to have too much crumble. But if you cover everything, then once that bakes, you should have the exact right amount of crumble topping on your rhubarb pie. So just spread it around there, get it in between all the edges of the rhubarb. I even cover up my crust a little bit because with frozen rhubarb, this is going to have to cook for a really long time in the oven. And I don't want to cover my edges with foil on the crust. So if you get that crumble all the way to the edges, it should bake really nicely for you and for the full length of time. So 85 minutes is what you're going to actually want to bake these for. As you can see, I put them in my oven. I got a little paranoid, ended up pulling them out and putting some foil in underneath them because I didn't want them to bubble up and overflow onto the bottom of my pan. I actually do like to keep my kitchen clean generally. And so you can see where I put the foil in there. And this is them cooked after 85 minutes. And you can eat it warm, you can eat it cooled off. I actually prefer it at room temperature, but my daughter was super impatient and really just wanted a slice. My kids love rhubarb pie. My husband loves rhubarb pie. Everybody in our family loves rhubarb pie except for my Georgia, because it is delicious. You will love this recipe. Give it a try and let me know what you think.